Hey everyone, a series of questions this evening before bed. One, what happens when Bitcoin is stored in a cold storage or a cold wallet and no one has the credentials to get in? Isn't it just lost? And if that's the case, then it would not pass to your beneficiaries in the case of someone dying with Bitcoin in a cold wallet. And isn't that a problem? The answer is yes, it used to be, but it is not a problem for you. Because if you follow my advice, you will never find yourself in that position. Also, I know walking around all the time makes people dizzy, but I just can't sit still, so forgive me. But anyway, so in the early days of Bitcoin, this was a significant problem that people, there was something called a private key, and you could store it on a hard drive, you could store it on a jump drive, all that sort of stuff. And for example, there is a guy in the United Kingdom, excuse me, that is suing his municipality trying to get access to the waste dump because he and his girlfriend were hanging out and she accidentally threw away some of his old computer equipment. And later on, it turned out that the hard drive of one of those computers had 7,800 Bitcoin on it, which is now worth more than $800 million. And it's buried in a landfill, and he's fighting with the city, and they won't let him excavate the landfill and all that sort of stuff. You don't have to worry about that because if your Bitcoin is on Coinbase, that will never happen. And if your Bitcoin is on Bitkey, that will never happen. The only reason that happened is because it was the early days of Bitcoin, back when Bitcoin was actually stored on hard drives or jump drives or, memory sticks, memory keys, all that sort of stuff. That is just not the way Bitcoin works anymore. The technology has been developed. It is much more advanced, and now there are great great products like Coinbase or like Bitkey that keep that from happening. And I'll explain how they keep that from happening. But the short take is you just don't have to worry about that because that's just not something that happens anymore. It used to happen, especially in the early, probably the first 5 years, maybe 6 years of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was launched in January of 2009. So from probably 2009 up through maybe 2014, maybe even 2015, that was a problem of people just losing Bitcoin that way. But the technology is much better now, and there's lots of ways to store it with a lot of backup options, including Bitkey, which I'll talk about. The truth is, if you stored it that way and you lost it, that is correct. But that is not something you need to worry about because that's just not the way it works anymore, and it's super easy to back it up. I will answer these other questions real quick, and then I will come back and talk about how inheritance specifically works with Coinbase and with Bitkey. So the question is, the second question is, what if I put Bitcoin on a jump drive, not a Bitkey, and it gets thrown away? We already covered that. Yes, if that's how you were storing it, that it would be lost forever. Nobody stores it that way, not since probably 2014. So be glad you live in the era where we have advanced technology for Bitcoin, because that's just not a problem anymore. And then the third question is, what about coin burning? Doesn't that alter some of the very qualities that make Bitcoin reliable? The answer is that does not apply to Bitcoin. Some other, what are called altcoins, 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 alternative currencies, which are mostly completely junk. The proper term for them that Bitcoiners, often use, I tend to not use it, but often use, is spelled SHIT coin. And it's called SHIT coin because they're worthless. It's all these completely worthless tokens that have all these features that nobody needs. And they all want to compete with Bitcoin, but really they are just a way for the founders of the coin to get rich. So they reserve 30%, 50%, 70% of the coin for themselves. They try to get everyone to buy the rest of the coins, and then they dump their coins on everyone else. And thus the term SHIT coin. It's a coin with no value. No security, none of that. So some of those have a coin burning function, which is sort of a scam in itself. But anyway, I won't go into that. The short take is you don't have to worry because none of that applies to Bitcoin. Okay, so let's talk specifically about how inheritance works, or what happens if you die and all of your Bitcoin is on a Bitkey or on Coinbase. 1 second. Okay, so if you have Bitcoin on Coinbase and you pass away, your heirs would be able to get it the same way they can from a bank, which is you show up with a death certificate, you prove that you are the rightful heirs to that, and Coinbase will turn over access to that account just like a bank account would turn over access to that account, or just like Fidelity or Charles Schwab would give you access to a stockbroker account of the person who passed away. So if Bitcoin is on Coinbase, there's no keys to get lost. There's no jump drives to throw away. There's no hard drives. None of that matters because, again, Coinbase has made it simple for you where you don't have to worry about all that sort of stuff. So the access to the Coinbase account ultimately can be unlocked by Coinbase if something bad happens and your heirs showed up with a death certificate and all that. And it works just like for any custody account where somebody has value locked in an account, whether it's a safe deposit box at a bank, or whether it's an actual bank account at a bank, or whether it's a brokerage account for trading stocks and bonds. You can get access to any of those things the exact same way you would a bank or anything else. Okay, so what about BitKey, the hardware device that I recommend everyone who has any meaningful amount of Bitcoin use? So with BitKey, there's actually two ways that inheritance works. The first is sort of the poor man's solution, and the other is the way that is super awesome that they just rolled out. In fact, I don't even think it rolls out. I think it rolls out in the next 30 days. Okay, so the poor man's solution is the BitKey device, the actual piece of Bitcoin, the little hardware device, can store up to 3 fingerprints. So if you want to build inheritance into your BitKey setup, and you want somebody other than you to be able to unlock your BitKey device, it's as simple as just getting 2 or 1 or 2, up to 2 of your loved ones to store their fingerprints on the BitKey device. So if something happens to you, the device can be unlocked by one of your loved ones. And if there are 3 people with fingerprints set up, then any of those 3 people could unlock that device. And if that device is stored securely at a safe deposit box in a bank or wherever it's stored, then if something happens to the person, their loved one would go get that device, unlock it with one of their fingerprints, and it would work, and they could get the Bitcoin that way. So, and then BitKey has built in a bunch of backup options, they're all like super secure, which is why it's so brilliant, like just brilliantly, amazingly brilliant. But anyway, they have backup options built in for what happens if someone passes away and you can't unlock their phone. Now, most loved ones, somebody knows the passcode to somebody's phone. So you can usually, in my experience, the people who have called me who have had loved ones pass away with Bitcoin have always been able to get into their loved one's phone because their loved one, that somebody knows the password to that phone other than just the person who passed away. But BitKey built in backup options in case that you cannot get access to that person's phone. Like nobody can unlock it. Face ID doesn't work. Fingerprint reader doesn't work. Passcode, nobody knows the passcode. So even in that situation, BitKey has a backup mechanism built in as long as one of the people who would inherit it can unlock the BitKey device. So as long as the fingerprint reader still works, or not as long as it works, as long as somebody's fingerprint will unlock the BitKey device, that solves that, and they can get access to the Bitcoin that way. They even built in a backup option in case the BitKey device is lost and the person's phone cannot be unlocked, and that requires trusted contacts. So as I always recommend, if you have a BitKey device, set it up and make sure you set up at least 1 or more trusted contacts. If you have a lot of Bitcoin, I would make sure you have at least 2 or more trusted contacts. Those trusted contacts can help your loved ones access a BitKey device after somebody has passed away, but whoever inherits it from them will need to have access to the person's iCloud account or Google account. So the process would be someone passes away, you can't get in their phone, it's locked. You would have to go through the process with Apple of submitting a death certificate, proving that you are the rightful heir, that whole process. And as soon as the next of kin gained control of the Apple iCloud account or of the Google account, they could then use the unlocked BitKey device to restore the Bitcoin to one of their own accounts, or if the BitKey device was lost, they could use the person's phone. But again, you just have to have something. You're going to have the BitKey device with a fingerprint of a living human that is still there, or you have to be able to unlock their phone you can get access to the Bitcoin that way. And in each of those cases, they have 7-day waiting periods with alerts and all that sort of stuff to make sure it's not a hacker. So they did a fantastic job in BitKey of making it basically impossible for a hacker to use the features that are intended for loved ones. So, which basically makes it easy for a loved one to get access to the Bitcoin after a waiting period of 7 days, or after going through the process of, proving the person has passed away with a death certificate, et cetera, or a court order that the person is, in a permanent coma or whatever it is like that. So they did a really brilliant job of building that in, and then building in backup options for what if you can't unlock the BitKey device? What if you can't unlock the person's phone? But in each of those cases, there's backups. Like if you can't unlock the phone, but you can unlock the BitKey device, you can get the Bitcoin that way. If you can't unlock the BitKey device, but you can unlock the person's phone, then you can get the access to the Bitcoin that way. And if they hid the BitKey device and nobody can find it, and if nobody can access the person's phone, then you can go to Apple with a death certificate or a court order. Apple will let you, the next of kin have access to the Apple iCloud account, and then you can use trusted contacts. The trusted contacts feature to verify that it is a legitimate person who's trying to gain access. And that's why it's important to have trusted contacts set up, which are typically loved ones. It's, most people, their trusted contacts are their spouse or their kids or, their best friend that they've known their whole life, that they would trust with their life and their wealth, or, the executor of their will. You can set up trusted contacts. And as I've said before, if you want me to be your trusted contact or one of your trusted contacts, I'm happy to do that as long as you and I are someone that we know each other. We can't be like, random internet acquaintances. It's got to be someone, if I have met you in person multiple times in the real world, I know what you look like. I know what your voice sounds like, all of that. I'm happy to be one of your trusted contacts because the whole point of a trusted contact is to verify that you are the real you, that you are not under duress, that you are not being forced into moving the Bitcoin, and that the person who actually owns the Bitcoin actually did pass away. So, your trusted contacts need to be willing to, go through the process of making sure that is true before they help unlock the Bitcoin. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose. So, but they built all of that in. But even better than that, the geniuses at BitKey who built this thing, and again, the company behind BitKey is Square, now called Block, which makes the Square payment terminals, which is a big deal. It's a publicly traded company, super legit. The founder, CEO, chairman is Jack Dorsey, the founder and longtime CEO of Twitter, before he sold it to Elon Musk in order to focus on this company. And this product is his vision for how Bitcoin should be easily stored by average people. So this is Jack Dorsey's vision, and his team executed it so unbelievably brilliantly. I mean, it's just beautiful. So anyway, in addition to sort of the poor man's solution, which is you can just get your loved ones to store their fingerprint on your BitKey device, which again does not immediately give them access to your Bitcoin. So if you're worried that, you're going to give your loved one, they're going to put their fingerprint on your BitKey device and suddenly their Bitcoin's going to disappear. No, you still need 2 out of 3 signatures, which means they still need the BitKey device plus you got to initiate the transaction on your phone. So they would need the BitKey device and your phone. Or if you have the BitKey device stored in a safe deposit box or something like that, then you don't have to worry about that because they don't have access to it. But if somebody has access to the BitKey device and their fingerprint will unlock it, and they have access to your phone, and they can unlock your phone, including the BitKey app with Face ID and all of that, then yes, they will have access to move your Bitcoin. At that point, they have all of the same access that you have, which is the ability to unlock your phone, the physical holding of your phone in your hand, the BitKey device, the ability to hold the BitKey device in their hand, the ability to hold the BitKey device to the back of the phone to initiate the transaction. So you don't want to do that with people you don't trust, but that's the whole point is, it's people you trust. Now, if you don't have people you trust that much, the BitKey team has built a brilliant inheritance solution into BitKey. Give me 1 second here. So the way it works is, again, the poor man's solution is just extra fingerprints on the one BitKey device. But the way they built it is your loved ones can get their own BitKey device, the actual physical hardware BitKey device, and you can set up inheritance where if you pass away, then after a 6-month waiting period, it will automatically transfer the Bitcoin from the loved one to the, from the person who passed away to their loved one. And they built in a bunch of checks and balances in there. So for example, at any point you can withdraw the loved one's ability to do that. So, if you're on your deathbed and you decide you actually don't love the person who is going to get your Bitcoin as much as you originally thought, you can reach over, grab your phone, and withdraw their ability to inherit the Bitcoin literally on your phone. So you can do that. They built that in. Of course, there's a 6-month waiting period. And during that waiting period, they email you, they send you push notifications, they alert you in a million different ways saying, hey, just FYI, the person, your loved one who has a BitKey device that you set up to be the trusted inheritor of this Bitcoin is initiating, basically they're signaling that you have passed away and the Bitcoin needs to transfer. And again, they can only do that if they have the BitKey device that was set up to inherit the Bitcoin. They can unlock it with their own fingerprint. They have access to their iCloud account, so there's no way a hacker could do this because a hacker would literally need to be, living inside the physical body of the person who's supposed to inherit the Bitcoin. But anyway, so you set all that up originally, and then if you pass away, the loved one can initiate a request for those funds. And there's a 6-month waiting period to make sure it's not a hacker. And there's all sorts of alerts to the original owner to make sure that, they actually have passed away. You get emails, you get push notifications, you get all this sort of stuff to make sure. And again, you can withdraw the ability for a loved one at any time to initiate this. But anyway, so that is the not poor man's solution. And the reason I say that is because it requires a second BitKey device. In order to set up inheritance that way, it requires a second BitKey device by the person who will inherit the Bitcoin. And so if you pass away, they can initiate a request for those funds to move from your Bitcoin device to BitKey device to their BitKey device. There is a 6-month waiting period, and the original owner of the original Bitcoin device, BitKey, the owner gets email notifications, they get push notifications to their phone, they get all this stuff for 6 solid months to make sure they're actually dead and unavailable and all that. And then at the end of 6 months, if the person has checked all the boxes, verified everything they need to verify, the fingerprint works, they have physical control of the BitKey device, all that. They jump through all the hoops to make sure that they are the real legit person. Then at the end of 6 months, it will sweep the funds from the original BitKey device to the backup BitKey device of the loved one that is going to inherit it. So the only downside of that approach is, one, it's not out yet. It rolls out in the next 30 to 60 days. So I did not check my own BitKey app right before this, but they said they'd be rolling out that feature in the next between now and January. I'm not sure if that's the end of January or the beginning of January, but the short case is BitKey will have inheritance built in a very elegant and beautiful way. And if you don't want to pay an extra $150 and you have loved ones that are nearby, just make sure that you set up the second and third fingerprint slots on the BitKey where it can recognize fingerprints of your loved ones. And if you want to make it super easy, make sure that, some of your loved ones that would inherit the Bitcoin know the unlock code to your phone. So if you pass away, they can unlock your phone. Now, if they have a fingerprint that will unlock BitKey, they technically don't need to be able to unlock your phone. They just need the BitKey device with the fingerprint. But if you want to make it super easy for them, if you pass away, then just make sure they can unlock your phone too. And that way they don't have to, they don't have to jump through the hoops of a death certificate and all that before they can move the Bitcoin. Or you can do it again, the way BitKey intended, which is with their inheritance feature. You just get a second BitKey device, set it up with the inheritance feature, and it's brilliant and it's beautiful and it does it all for you and it's super elegant. So anyway, that's the gist. The good news is there's really no way to accidentally throw away Bitcoin anymore. Unless you're using something I don't recommend. That's why I do not recommend products like Ledger or Trezor or any of those sort of products, because it's too easy to lose your Bitcoin. So, but with BitKey, you don't have to worry about that. And with Coinbase, you don't have to worry about that, which is why those are the two products I recommend, because those are the two most reputable. They are both publicly traded. They are both run by great people. Brian Armstrong, who runs Coinbase, Jack Dorsey, who runs Block. both publicly traded companies, both very reputable. Both of them have Bitcoin on their balance sheet as a corporate treasury asset. And they're just, they're great people that are running great reputable companies. And to their credit, they have made it very easy to buy and hold Bitcoin in a way that you can't accidentally lose. So in fact, in my entire life, I've never met or known anyone who has actually lost Bitcoin on Coinbase or Bitkey. Nobody's ever lost it. I have heard of some people that have been scammed out of Bitcoin on Coinbase because they got tricked by somebody pretending to be a technical support representative or, the fraud department or something like that at Coinbase. So, I have heard of people that have been tricked out of, some of their Bitcoin on Coinbase, but that's not because they didn't lose it. It wasn't like lost, to humanity or anything like that. It was just someone called them and tricked them into believing they were a Coinbase employee, and then they tricked them into giving, they sweet talked them into getting the two-factor authentication code and the password and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, if you give up all that, a scammer is going to get your Bitcoin on Coinbase. Now, which is why I recommend Bitkey, because it's, near impossible to scam somebody on Bitkey because, you have to sweet talk them into transferring their Bitcoin when it's very blatantly clear that that's what's happening, as opposed to Coinbase, where a lot of times hackers can sweet talk people into getting access to an account where the person doesn't realize that what they're doing is giving access to the account, and then poof, the Bitcoin is transferred by the hacker. So that never happens with Bitkey because a hacker can never initiate a transaction. They can't hack a Bitkey, so their only option is to sweet talk you into transferring your Bitcoin to them, which is it's way harder to scam somebody into transferring their Bitcoin to the attacker when it's on Bitkey, because it's very clear that that's what's going on, as opposed to Coinbase, where they don't need to try to talk you into transferring the Bitcoin. They just need to sweet talk you into giving them access to the account so they can do it. So anyway, one additional thought. Very early in the days of Bitcoin, somebody asked Satoshi Nakamoto himself these very questions. They said, what happens if Bitcoin disappears forever? What happens if somebody, puts it on a Ledger device or a Trezor device, which did not exist back then, but the equivalent? What happens if somebody backs up what they actually asked, I think, was, what happens if somebody backs up their private key on a zip drive or a jump drive or a USB key or whatever, and then loses it, or drops it, in a boating accident or something. And Satoshi Nakamoto said it is a gift to the rest of the Bitcoin community, because when Bitcoin is lost, it makes all of the rest of the Bitcoin slightly more valuable. Any currency works that way. If you take a tiny little bit of gold and you throw it over the side of a boat in the middle of the ocean, it makes all of the other gold in the world slightly more valuable, because the total amount of gold that humans have went down a little bit, which means the amount of gold that people have is worth a tiny bit more. So Bitcoin works the same way. If somebody does lose Bitcoin, it's effectively, and Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, said this explicitly. He said, if you lose Bitcoin permanently, you are essentially gifting a little bit of value to every other Bitcoin holder, because that tiny little bit of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin that was lost, is now out of circulation, which means instead of 21 million Bitcoin representing all the Bitcoin that will ever exist, that number is slightly less than 21 million Bitcoin, because some of it is lost, which means all of the other Bitcoin that is not lost absorbs that value, because the ratio of the Bitcoin to all the goods and services in the world that could be bought with Bitcoin is slightly more valuable on the Bitcoin side, because there's slightly less of it. That being said, I don't want that to happen to any of you, which is why I recommend Coinbase and Bitkey, so that you will never lose your Bitcoin, and it will never be misplaced. It will never lose it. And therefore you don't have to accidentally, contribute value to the entire rest of the Bitcoin community by losing some of yours. So, that's why I recommend Coinbase and Bitkey, because there's virtually zero chance that you, especially with Bitkey, that you will ever lose your Bitcoin somehow. And so, you will have it for the long haul, and that's the point. So those are the answers to those three questions. I think I answered everything related to those questions. And yeah, if you have any other questions, keep sending them my way. Thanks, everyone.